Hi, this is Yash, and welcome back to the Unfiltered Feed. Last time we did the Drivers' Championship predictions for 2026, and now it's time for Constructors' predictions. I think this video will be much shorter because we just have 11 teams, and these predictions will be more or less based on the drivers' predictions because the Constructors' points are basically the total of the two drivers. So it's going to be more or less the same. So let's quickly get started. 11 teams again this year. We have a new entry in Cadillac, and we've also got Audi, which is the rebranded version of Sauber or Stake F1 team, as it was called last year. So let's get started. We'll go from P11 to P1. So in last position, I have got Cadillac. This again is kind of it has to be last because I placed both their drivers in the last positions as well. And as I said in that video, it's quite obvious because this is a brand new team. They are starting all their operations from scratch. So it will take some time for them to kind of get used to the different processes, methods, build more experience, have their, the development pipeline ready. And yeah, in general, they wouldn't want to really take a risk at this stage. They would want to have a conservative approach and see what's working and then develop the car that way. So I'm predicting them to be last in the championship. Yeah, nothing more to say about this. Let's move to P10. And we have Aston Martin. This is quite interesting because Aston Martin were that team uh, which everybody expected a lot from, especially with the new regs. They basically were collecting people like Infinity Stones. They already had Fernando Alonso. They signed a deal with Honda. They brought in Adrian Newey as the chief designer and now the CEO. They've got a few other talented people as well who have been at previously successful F1 teams. But unfortunately, it's not worked out for Aston Martin, at least for now. Genuinely believe that the car still has a lot of potential. It's just that they haven't really been able to unlock it because of the reliability issues related to the power unit. So I think if Honda is able to fix their power units, if Aston Martin in general is able to improve their reliability, I still think this car might deliver some points throughout the season, and then they should be in a better place for next year. But this is definitely not the start that they hope for. So it's not a good position, which is why I'm placing them in P10. Next up, we have Audi. This is another new team in a sense because they are making their own power units for the first time. And to be honest, this power unit has surprised me because I always thought that Audi and Red Bull as well might find it a bit difficult. But given the testing and all of that, Audi doesn't seem to be as bad as everybody thought, at least the power unit. So, you know, everybody's expecting them to be in the midfield. I still think they'll be towards the back because there are other teams that have been, you know, having the same, let's say, power units and the same personnel in general, and they have a better chance of succeeding. Whereas Audi, inevitably, I think they'll still face some power unit issues, some reliability concerns, and then once they are through with all of that, they should become a much better operation. So for this season at least, I think they'll still be towards the back. So P9 for them. But to be honest, beating Aston Martin would still be a fantastic achievement for them. In P8, another disappointment. It's Williams. This team, just like Aston Martin, a lot was expected from them. They were the first ones to stop their development on last year's car and focused full attention. to the 2026 car. But unfortunately, because of a few logistics related issues and in general the team, they really haven't developed their systems a lot historically, which is why they found themselves behind schedule. And there apparently there still are things to improve, obviously, as you would expect. I think the car itself is is not the problem. It's basically the development cycle, right? If you know what you want to do, but you can't do it within a specific time limit, then it's basically useless, right? And I think that's what Williams have found themselves in. I think they went a bit too aggressive and then they overestimated their own capacity and now they're in this mess. But I think, it's just a matter of time. With time, they can bring more upgrades. They can take off the excess weight of the car and then hopefully they can get better. But I think it's going to be P8 because just like Aston Martin, it's going to take them some time to find the performance. I would actually be very happy if they finish above P8. I mean, they could easily finish in P5 again. I just think that it's going to be more tough, and it's a bit more probable that they finish in P8 this year. Next up, P7, it's Racing Bulls. I think P5, P6, P7 are going to be fairly close. Maybe even P8 with Williams. These four teams are going to lock the midfield this year, and I think it's going to keep changing throughout the year. Racing Bulls, they've looked quite reliable. They've looked quite decent in testing. I'm just worried about the Ford engine again. It's a first-time power unit. There are bound to be a few mistakes, a few reliability concerns, a few DNFs, which should hold them back. But other than that, Racing Bulls have always been a really efficient outfit. They've always overperformed than the machinery that they have, and I expect nothing different from them. They've got two solid drivers. Lindblad obviously is a rookie, but he's had a lot of hype behind him, and I hope that he can deliver to an extent. And Lawson, as I mentioned in my drivers predictions video, I am a big fan, and I'm really hoping that he gets the right car and he's in the right frame of mind to be able to deliver some good results. Because it's honestly been quite tough for him over the past 3 seasons. He's always found himself in difficult situations where he's always had to perform. He doesn't really get that time to set in and ease into the team, understand the people, understand the car. But I hope that with this preseason, he's gotten that time, and I hope he can perform. So Racing Bulls in P7. Next up, we have Haas. As I said in my drivers predictions video, I'm expecting big things from Haas this year. They've looked really good in testing. They've, I think, ran the third or the second most laps throughout testing, which is insane. They haven't really had any major issues, and both their drivers are looking comfortable with the car. So, yeah, big things expected from Haas. I think them, and let's move to the next team, Alpine. Both these teams are going to be in the points most of the times, along with Racing Bulls. So it's basically going to be the top four teams who will most likely always be in the points. But then for the remaining slot, for the remaining 2 or 3 points positions, I think it's always going to be a Haas, Alpine, or Racing Bull, right? They're going to keep fighting amongst each other. So it's going to be quite interesting to keep an eye on this midfield, battle. Coming to Alpine, again, it's pretty much the same thing from the previous video where they've come back. I think they've come back to the midfield after 2 really poor seasons. The switch to Mercedes obviously should pay off because they will have better engines. Although I think they might struggle a bit in the start because integrating a new power unit is always a bit of a challenge, I think. Haas have that advantage because they've been using Ferrari power units since their inception. So they have that the communication is better, They might have a few personnel who are or a few Ferrari engineers who are assigned to help Haas with the power units. So there's that smooth trust and communication channel, which I think Alpine will take some time to build. But once they do that, I think this package should be quite good. So what I'm expecting is Haas might, you know, start better, but eventually, as the season progresses, I'm expecting Alpine to catch up, and towards the end, it should be a very interesting fight. Now it's time for the big four, and the bottom of the big four, I'm placing Red Bull. It's very simple. There are two things. First of all, I'm not quite sure of the Ford power unit still. Even though it's done well in preseason testing, it did have a few issues, at least with Isaac Hajar. But so yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying. Throughout the season, I think there will be a few DNFs related to the power unit. If not DNFs, there will be a few issues, which will force them to run lower power or something like that. It's quite natural for a new power unit manufacturer to face some issues, and I think that will eventually happen. Like the team principal, Laurent Mekies, has been saying. He's I think since the last year, he's been warning that Red Bull won't be as strong, at least at the start of the season. And the second issue is again, the car will always suit Max Verstappen more. He is the best driver in Formula One, so you have to, maximize the car such that he can, maximize his performances, which makes it a bit difficult for Isaac Hajar. Although I don't think the situation will be as bad as it was last year or the year before that, I still think Hajar will struggle to, be as consistent as Max Verstappen, which means, Red Bull really will have, mostly one or one and a half drivers contributing, which is why I think they'll finish P4. So it's a mixture of these two things. Next up, we have McLaren in P3. To be honest, I placed Max Verstappen above both the McLaren drivers in the drivers' predictions. But like I mentioned before, I think both the McLaren drivers are going to contribute fairly equally towards the Constructors' Championship. Whereas for Red Bull, it's mostly going to be Max, and Isaac might contribute a few points here and there, which is why I think McLaren will pip Red Bull to the Constructors' Championship, at least the podium spot in the Constructors' Championship. I think it's going to be fairly close between these two teams, but McLaren will just be ahead. I think from all the rumors and what uh, Andrea Stella has been saying, um, McLaren are expecting a few issues with the engine energy management system. They've been voicing to make a few changes to the system. I'm not quite sure about the actual appeals and the demands from them, but it just shows or it tells me that they are not as confident. And it's expected, they are not the actual power unit manufacturer, so it's going to take them some time to understand everything. Although it's going to be a lot closer than how it was in 2014, but I would expect McLaren to take some time to understand their car, understand these regulation sets, understand the Mercedes engine. But I think by then it's going to be a bit too late for this year at least. So for now, at least in this year, I'm placing them P3. Now that leaves us with the top two. If you saw my drivers' predictions, it was Ferrari and Mercedes who locked the top two spots, and it was Charles Leclerc who won the championship. So now let's see who's P2. I've gone with Mercedes in P2, which means it's Ferrari in P1. I think Ferrari as a package will just pip Mercedes. It's going to be very close, but I think the experience that Leclerc and Hamilton have is going to benefit Ferrari, and both these drivers will be able to contribute more consistently than someone like a Kimi Antonelli and Russell. Don't get me wrong, I think Kimi Antonelli is a fantastic driver and he'll massively improve from last year. But I just think that Leclerc and Hamilton will have that mental edge to do better on more weekends. Whereas with Kimi Antonelli, I think as the Mercedes starts competing for wins, there inevitably will be some pressure that eventually gets to him. And that's when mistakes can creep in, or you might kind of not push a lot, because you might be worried of binning it or crashing out of the race. Um, I mean, these things have happened to Oscar Piastri as well last year and also in 2025, uh, in 2024 and in 2025 as well. So I think the experience that the Ferrari drivers have, plus I think a better second half of the season will help Ferrari win the Constructors' Championship. Whereas for Mercedes, I think they are going to start the season well. I think they might have the strongest engine, but the rule change in June is going to probably hold them back a bit. But yeah, in general, I think it's going to be a very close fight between the top two teams. It's going to be very close between 3 and 4, and then it's going to be very close between 5, 6, 7, and maybe even 8. So we are going to have three sets of championships. But yeah, it's been a short video. That's my predictions. Um, am I absolutely delusional for predicting a double Ferrari championship win? Absolutely yes. But do I think it's impossible or do I think it's absolutely unrealistic? No. I think Ferrari this year, they have taken a much cautious approach, like Fred Vasseur said. In 2022, if you saw, Ferrari opted for a completely different path compared to Mercedes and Red Bull, right? They went with their the side pods that had the duct. I don't know what you call it, but it was a very different approach, and it clearly did not work as well as they thought. But this year, Ferrari, they've been quite cautious. They've been quite conservative. Um, they are not in a rush to commit to a concept. That's what Fred Vasseur has been saying. And then as the preseason test evolved, Ferrari brought in new pieces which have worked, luckily. So it feels like they have become a bit smarter, and they are not really overdoing things. They're not really committing to the wrong things. They are very very cautious, which might help them. You never know. Um, the only thing that worries me is the past 15 or so years. There have been many seasons where Ferrari have started as the favorites, but they have kind of dipped towards the end of the season. I think the only season that comes to the mind where Ferrari weren't the favorites at the start, but then ended up, you know, turning up towards the end was 2024. And luckily, it was under Fred Vasseur as well. So you never know, if it's the same personnel and if it's the same approach from Fred Vasseur and the team around him, there could be a repeat. And if that happens, then it's going to be absolutely incredible to watch. So yeah, that's my predictions for this year's constructors championship. Um, I'll definitely make a video at the end of the season, looking back at these predictions and seeing how many were correct and how many were wrong. I think for constructors, I would be very happy if I get six right or five. Yeah, not sure. Around 5 to 6. If I get those many right, I think it will have been a successful prediction season. But yeah, that's it for now. The F1 season is going to start very soon, and I'll hopefully make a few more videos. I'm still not sure if I should just make videos covering the race weekend, or I should make some thoughtful videos sharing my opinions. That would be more exciting for me. But yeah, nevertheless, I hope I make a few more videos, and I'll see you in the next one. Till then, goodbye, take care, and yeah, Forza Ferrari.